The sound of champagne glasses clinking drifted through the frosted windows of the Riverside Manor. Inside, I could see silhouettes moving past the candlelit dining room, hear the warm buzz of conversation and laughter. My 7-year-old daughter Mia pressed her face against the cold glass, her breath fogging up the window. "Mommy, why aren't we going inside? I'm cold." I pulled her closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was supposed to be our Thanksgiving, our family tradition, the one day of the year when my mother actually pretended we mattered. The heavy oak door swung open, and my mother appeared in the doorway. She was wearing her signature cream cashmere sweater and pearls, her hair perfectly styled. Behind her, I could see my brother Derek and his wife Amanda, both holding wine glasses, both looking annoyingly comfortable in the warmth. "Sarah," my mother said, not quite meeting my eyes. "What are you doing here?" The question hit me like a slap. What do I mean? What am I doing here? You invited us. Thanksgiving dinner at 6, you said. I have your text message. She pursed her lips, that familiar expression of mild irritation crossing her face. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We're at capacity tonight. The table only seats 12, and with Derek's in-laws joining us." Capacity? The word came out sharper than I intended. "Mom, we drove 3 hours to get here." Mia was so excited. "She made you a drawing." Mia held up a crayon picture of our family around a turkey, her little hand trembling from the cold. My mother barely glanced at it. "It's a lovely gesture, sweetheart, but tonight just isn't going to work. Perhaps we can arrange something for Christmas." Perhaps? I felt the anger rising in my chest, hot and bitter. "Mom, we're standing on your doorstep in 30-degree weather. My daughter is freezing. You specifically told me to come tonight." I said no such thing. Her voice was flat, dismissive. "You must have misread my message. Now, I really need to get back to our guests. I'm sure you understand." Before I could respond, she stepped back and started to close the door. Through the narrowing gap, I caught a glimpse of Derek raising his glass in a toast, Amanda laughing at something someone said. The door clicked shut. The lock turned. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Behind me, Mia started to cry. Not the loud, dramatic crying of a tantrum, but the quiet, confused sobbing of a child who didn't understand why her grandmother had just shut the door in her face. "Come on, baby," I whispered, picking her up even though she was getting too big for it. "Let's go." I carried her back to our car, her little body shaking against mine. As I buckled her into her booster seat, she looked up at me with those huge brown eyes. Did I do something wrong? Does Grandma not like me? The question broke something inside me. No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. You're perfect. Then why doesn't she want to see us? I had no answer for that. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that sometimes people are just cruel? That blood doesn't always mean love? That your own mother can look at you like you're nothing more than an inconvenience? I started the car, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The heat kicked on, but it did nothing to warm the cold, hollow feeling in my chest. I pulled out my phone and checked my messages, my vision blurring with angry tears. There it was, my mother's text from last week. Thanksgiving dinner, November 28th, 6 p.m. Please bring Mia. Looking forward to seeing you both. I screenshotted it. I don't know why. Maybe I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that this had really happened. As I merged onto the highway, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sarah, it's me." I nearly dropped the phone. "Aunt Linda, where are you right now?" "Driving home. We just left Mom's house." "Well, we never actually made it inside her house." There was a long pause. "She turned you away." It wasn't a question. Somehow, she already knew. "How did you—" "I'm still in the area. I drove by an hour ago, saw all the cars in the driveway. Your mother told me last month that she was keeping Thanksgiving small and intimate this year. Just immediate family. But I counted at least 15 cars in that driveway, Sarah. 15. The anger in her voice was palpable. Aunt Linda was my father's sister, and she'd always been the black sheep of the family. After my dad passed away when I was 12, my mother had slowly frozen her out of our lives, just like she'd done to me. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that," I managed. "Don't apologize. Listen to me carefully. Turn the car around." "What?" "Turn around and go back to the manor. Right now." "Aunt Linda, I can't. Mia is already upset, and I don't want to." "Sarah Marie Collins, I am telling you to turn that car around and drive back to Riverside Manor immediately. Do you trust me?" I glanced in the rearview mirror. Mia had fallen asleep, her tear-stained face pressed against the window. "Then do it. I'll meet you there in 15 minutes. And Sarah? Don't go to the front door. Pull around to the east side of the house, by the service entrance. Can you do that for me? My hands were trembling as I took the next exit and looped back toward my mother's estate. This was insane. We'd just been humiliated, turned away like beggars. What could Aunt Linda possibly? But I trusted her. She was the only family member who'd ever shown up for me, who'd helped me pay for college when my mother refused, who'd been there in the hospital when Mia was born, while my own mother claimed she was too busy to visit. The manor appeared through the trees, all lit up like something from a magazine spread. I drove past the main entrance, following the winding driveway around to the east side like Aunt Linda had instructed. The service entrance was dark, hidden behind a row of evergreen trees. A car pulled in behind me. Aunt Linda stepped out, and even in the dim light, I could see the fury in her eyes. "Stay here for just a minute," she said. "Keep Mia in the car." "What's going on?" She smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting a very long time for this moment. "Your mother made a terrible mistake tonight. She forgot that I'm still a co-trustee of your father's estate." My father's estate. I barely remembered the details. When he died, most of his assets had gone into a trust that my mother controlled. She'd always told me there was nothing left for me, that the medical bills from his illness had drained everything. I don't understand. "You will. Come on." She led me to the service door and pulled out a key. "Your father gave me this 20 years ago. Made me promise to keep it, just in case." The door swung open silently, and we stepped into the warm kitchen. The catering staff barely looked up. They were too busy plating desserts and refilling champagne bottles. We moved through the kitchen like ghosts, following the sound of voices to the main dining room. My mother was standing at the head of the table, holding court. Derek sat to her right, Amanda to her left. I recognized some of the faces. Old family friends, my mother's book club members, people from her country club. The table was stunning, decorated with autumn leaves and gold-rimmed china. There were exactly 12 place settings, and not one of them had my name. Aunt Linda walked straight into the dining room. The conversation died instantly. "Linda," my mother's face went pale. "What are you doing here? I told you we were keeping things small this year." "Small." Aunt Linda looked around the table slowly. 12 people is small, but apparently not small enough to include your own daughter and granddaughter. The silence was deafening. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Derek stared at his plate. "I don't know what Sarah told you," my mother began, her voice tight. "But there was a misunderstanding about—" "There was no misunderstanding, Margaret." Aunt Linda pulled out her phone. "Sarah showed me your text message, the one where you specifically invited her and Mia to Thanksgiving dinner tonight at 6 p.m. She held up the phone so everyone could see the screenshot. My mother's perfectly composed expression cracked, just for a second. "That's taken out of context. I sent a follow-up message explaining that." "You sent no such message. I checked. What you did was deliberately invite your daughter to drive 3 hours, with her child, in the cold, just so you could turn her away at the door in front of a 7-year-old girl who spent all week making drawings for you." Amanda whispered something to Derek. He put his hand on her arm, silencing her. "This is a private family matter," my mother said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'll thank you not to air our personal business in front of our guests." "Private?" Aunt Linda's laugh was harsh. "You made it public the moment you humiliated Sarah and Mia on your doorstep. You want to talk about family matters? Fine. Let's talk about the family trust." The color drained from my mother's face. "Linda, don't. Let's talk about how you've been telling Sarah for 13 years that there was nothing left from her father's estate, how you claimed everything went to medical bills and estate taxes, how you made her believe she wasn't entitled to anything. That's private financial information," my mother snapped. "You have no right." "I have every right. I'm a co-trustee, remember? Which means I have access to all the records, including the ones that show you've been taking distributions from the trust for years, paying for Derek's business ventures, funding Amanda's boutique. Hell, you paid for this house with trust money." The guests were staring now, some of them looking away in embarrassment, others leaning forward with undisguised interest. Derek finally spoke up. "That's not true. Mom, tell her that's not true." Aunt Linda pulled out a folder from her bag. "These are the trust documents. Your father's will specifically stated that the estate was to be divided equally between his 2 children upon the youngest turning 25. Sarah turned 25 8 years ago. Margaret, 8 years. She was entitled to half of everything, and you never told her." My legs felt weak. I grabbed the doorframe for support. My mother's face was red now, her composure completely shattered. The trust language was ambiguous. My lawyers said, "Your lawyers said what you paid them to say. But I have lawyers too. And they're very interested in the fact that you've been taking distributions from a trust that should have been dissolved 8 years ago. That's called embezzlement, Margaret. How dare you accuse me of?" The current value of the trust is $3.2 million. Sarah's share should be $1.6 million. But according to these records, you've withdrawn over $2 million in the past decade. Money that should have been split between both children. Money that you spent on Derek's failed restaurant. On this house. On your country club memberships while Sarah was working 2 jobs to pay for her daughter's childcare. The room was completely silent now. Even the catering staff had stopped moving. Derek looked at our mother, his face pale. "Mom, is this true?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, her hands gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. "Here's what's going to happen," Aunt Linda continued, her voice cold and clear. "Tomorrow morning, I'm filing a petition with the probate court to have you removed as trustee for breach of fiduciary duty. I'm also filing a civil suit for the return of all funds wrongfully distributed. And Sarah here is going to finally get what her father wanted her to have." "You can't do this," my mother whispered. "I already did. The papers are being filed first thing tomorrow morning. My lawyers have been working on this for 3 months. See, I got suspicious when Sarah mentioned that you'd refused to help with Mia's medical bills last year. Refused to help your own granddaughter with her asthma treatments. That's when I started digging into the trust records." She turned to look at me, her expression softening. "Sarah, your father loved you more than anything in this world. He set up that trust specifically to make sure you'd be taken care of. He made me co-trustee because he knew, even back then, that your mother might try something like this. I'm sorry it took me so long to figure out what was happening. I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was hearing. On $1.6 million, money that should have been mine, money that could have changed everything. Mia's medical bills, my student loans, the apartment with the leaking ceiling that I couldn't afford to move out of." One of the guests stood up, mumbling something about needing to leave, then another. Within minutes, people were making excuses, grabbing coats, hurrying out the door. Nobody wanted to be there for what came next. Derek and Amanda were among the last to leave. As he passed me in the doorway, Derek wouldn't meet my eyes. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "Sarah, I swear I didn't know about the trust. I wanted to believe him. But he'd taken the money, hadn't he? The restaurant that failed, the house he and Amanda lived in, the European vacation they'd posted about on Facebook last summer. He might not have known where the money came from, but he'd never questioned it either. Finally, it was just me, Aunt Linda, and my mother in that beautiful dining room with its perfect table settings and expensive china." My mother sank into her chair. She looked older suddenly, all the polish and poise stripped away. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to tell Sarah the truth," Aunt Linda said. "All of it." My mother stared at her hands for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "When your father got sick, I was so angry. Angry at him for getting cancer. Angry at the world for taking him away from me. And after he died, I looked at you and all I could see was him. You had his eyes, his smile, his stubbornness. It hurt too much to look at you. So you pushed me away," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't matter." Derek was easier. He didn't remind me of what I'd lost. And when he struggled, when his business failed, I wanted to fix it. I wanted to fix something because I couldn't fix what happened to your father. So you stole from me to give to him. She flinched at the word stole, but she didn't deny it. "And tonight?" I asked. "Why tonight? Why invite us just to turn us away?" For the first time, she looked directly at me. "Because Amanda is pregnant. Derek wanted to announce it at Thanksgiving, and he asked me to keep it small and intimate. Family only." And she trailed off, but I understood. She didn't consider us family. Not really. Not the way she considered Derek and Amanda family. Aunt Linda touched my arm gently. "We should go check on Mia. The lawyers will handle the rest." I nodded, unable to form words. As we turned to leave, my mother spoke one last time. "Sarah, I'm sorry." I stopped but didn't turn around. "You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." We walked back through the service entrance, past the kitchen where the catering staff was quietly packing up, past the perfectly decorated rooms that had never been meant for me. Mia was still asleep in the car, her thumb in her mouth the way she only did when she was really tired. I buckled myself into the driver's seat and just sat there for a moment, trying to process everything. Aunt Linda leaned against my car window. You okay? I don't know what I am. That's fair. Listen, the legal stuff is going to take time, probably several months. But I want you to know that your father would be so proud of you. You put yourself through college. You're raising an amazing daughter on your own. You survived everything your mother threw at you, and you did it with grace. I don't feel very graceful right now. You don't have to. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be hurt. But don't let her take anything else from you. Don't let her steal your joy or your peace. That's what she wants. Don't give it to her. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with everything that had happened. When we finally got back to our tiny apartment, I carried Mia inside and tucked her into bed. She stirred as I pulled the blanket up to her chin. Are we home? She mumbled sleepily. Yeah, baby, we're home. Good. I like it here better anyway. Grandma's house is too cold. I kissed her forehead, my heart aching with how perceptive she was. You're right. It is too cold. Later, after I'd changed into sweatpants and made myself a cup of tea, I sat on the couch and let myself cry. Not sad tears, exactly. Angry tears, relieved tears, confused tears, all of it mixed together in a messy, complicated knot. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Linda. Just confirmed with the lawyers. Filing tomorrow at 9 a.m. You're going to get through this. Your dad is watching, and he's so proud of you. I looked around our small living room, at the thrift store furniture and the crayon drawings taped to the walls, at the bookshelf overflowing with library books and Mia's collection of stuffed animals, at the photos of us, just the two of us, smiling at the beach last summer during our budget vacation. This was home, not my mother's mansion with its marble floors and designer furniture, not the cold, perfect rooms where love came with conditions and strings attached. This small, messy, imperfect space where my daughter felt safe enough to sleep and dream, where we danced to music in our pajamas and ate cereal for dinner when I was too tired to cook, where we were wanted. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers and legal documents. My mother fought back, of course, hiring expensive attorneys who tried to claim that the trust distributions were justified, that she'd been acting in good faith. But Aunt Linda's lawyers were relentless, and they had the records to prove every lie. Derek called me once, 3 days after Thanksgiving. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet. Maybe I never would be. The civil case moved faster than anyone expected. My mother's lawyers apparently advised her that fighting it would only make things worse, potentially even criminal. In the end, she agreed to a settlement. I wouldn't get the full $1.6 million, not after legal fees and the amount she'd already spent, but I would get enough. Enough to pay off my student loans. Enough to move to a better apartment with heat that actually worked and windows that didn't leak. Enough to put money aside for Mia's education. Enough to finally breathe. The day the settlement check arrived, I took Mia out for ice cream. We sat at our favorite shop, eating sundaes that were way too big, and she asked me why I seemed so happy. Because good things are coming, sweetheart. We're going to be okay. We were already okay, Mommy. I looked at her, this perfect little human who'd never once complained about our tiny apartment or our tight budget, who made the best of everything and found joy in the simplest things. You're right, I said, pulling her into a hug. We were already okay. We're just going to be a little more okay now. She giggled and went back to her ice cream, and I made a silent promise to my father, wherever he was. I promised that I would use this money wisely, that I would teach Mia about kindness and generosity and how to stand up for herself, that I would break the cycle of cruelty that my mother had tried to pass down to me. 3 months later, we moved into our new place. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, so Mia could finally have her own space and I could have a home office. A little backyard where we planted a garden. Neighbors who waved hello and actually meant it. On our first night there, as we sat on the floor eating pizza surrounded by unpacked boxes, Mia looked around and smiled. This is perfect, Mommy. Yeah, baby. It really is. My mother never apologized. Not really. She sent a card at Christmas, a generic thinking of you message with no mention of what had happened. I threw it away. Derek sent a gift for Mia's 8th birthday, an expensive doll that she politely thanked him for and then never played with. She told me later that it felt too fancy, like she wasn't supposed to touch it, like it came with conditions. She was learning, just like I had. Some gifts aren't worth accepting. Aunt Linda became a regular presence in our lives. Sunday dinners, weekend trips to the museum, birthday celebrations that felt genuine and warm. She filled a space that my mother had left empty, and she did it with grace and love and absolutely no expectation of anything in return. One Sunday afternoon, as we sat in our backyard watching Mia play, Aunt Linda handed me an envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a photo I'd never seen before. My father, young and healthy, standing in front of Riverside Manor with his arm around a little girl. Me, maybe 4 years old, grinning up at him with absolute adoration. "He took me there once," Aunt Linda said softly, "about a year before he got sick. He showed me around the property and told me his plans. How he wanted it to be a place where family gathered, where you would bring your own children someday, where there would always be room for everyone." I stared at the photo, at my father's smile, at the way he was looking at me like I was the most important person in the world. "That's not what it became," I said. "No, but you can make it something better. You and Mia, what you have here, it's exactly what he would have wanted. Not the money or the big house. Just this. Love. Real, unconditional love." I kept that photo on my bedside table, a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd found. My father was gone, and I couldn't change that. My mother had made her choices, and I couldn't change those either. But I could choose differently. I could choose to be the mother my daughter deserved, the kind of mother who would never make her feel unwanted or less than, the kind of mother who would always have room at the table, no matter what. And maybe, in some small way, that was the greatest inheritance my father could have given me. Not the money, though that helped, but the understanding that family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shows up, who fights for you, who makes space for you at their table, even when it's crowded, especially when it's crowded. 6 months after we moved, on a random Tuesday evening, Mia came running into the kitchen holding a piece of paper. "Look what I made at school." It was a family tree project. At the top, she'd written, "My family," in careful block letters. She'd drawn me and her, of course, and Aunt Linda, and her teacher, Mrs. Robertson, who'd been so patient with her anxiety, and Marcus from next door, who taught her how to ride a bike, and Jenny from her class, who she had playdates with every week. "This is beautiful, baby. Miss Chen said family is who loves you, so I drew everyone who loves me." I noticed my mother's name wasn't on there. Neither was Derek's. She'd never asked about them, never wondered why we didn't see them anymore. Children understand more than we give them credit for. They know who makes them feel safe and who doesn't. "Can we have everyone over for dinner?" she asked. "Like a real family dinner?" "Absolutely. Let's do it this weekend." That Saturday, our little house was full. Aunt Linda brought her famous lasagna. Marcus and his mom came with a salad. Jenny and her parents brought dessert. Mrs. Robertson even stopped by with flowers. We crowded around our dining table, chairs pulled in from every room, elbows bumping, conversations overlapping. It was chaotic and loud and absolutely perfect. As I looked around the table at all these people who'd chosen to be part of our lives, who showed up without conditions or expectations, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. My mother's Thanksgiving table had been beautiful. Perfect china, perfect decorations, perfectly orchestrated. But it had been empty of the only thing that mattered. This table was mismatched and crowded and covered in spilled lemonade and garlic breadcrumbs. And it was overflowing with exactly what my father had wanted for me all along. Love. Real, messy, unconditional love. And there was always, always room for one more.